The text arrived at 11:42 p.m. on a Tuesday, the kind of hour when nothing good ever happens. I was half asleep, my laptop balanced precariously on my stomach as I tried to finish reviewing quarterly projections for tomorrow's meeting. The gentle ping from my phone barely registered until I absent-mindedly reached for it, expecting another work email that could wait until morning. Instead, I saw Kevin's name. My brother rarely texted this late. Check out Jordan's latest deposit. Another. $2K straight to the bank of Mom and Dad. Maybe we should start charging her account fees. I stared at the message, confusion settling in before understanding. This wasn't meant for me. The realization came slowly, then all at once, like ice water trickling down my spine. I opened the full conversation and scrolled up. Mom. She called again, asking if the furnace is working okay after she paid for the repairs. I told her it's still making that awful noise. She's sending another technician next week. Dad. Our little ATM doesn't disappoint. Maybe next month we can convince her we need a new roof. Kevin. Just tell her you saw water stains on the ceiling. Works every time. Mom. Remember when she found out how much we spent on our cruise and almost had a fit? Thank God she bought. That we canceled it and needed the money for your dad's medical tests. The messages went on and on, spanning months, years. My chest tightened as I scrolled through their private conversations, their mockery, their calculated manipulation. My hands shook so badly I had to set the phone down on my nightstand. The glow of the screen seemed to taunt me with its revelations. For 5 years, I'd been sending money home, believing I was helping my parents through one financial emergency after another. Medical bills, home repairs, car troubles, helping my younger brother through college when his scholarships fell through. All lies, apparently. Each crisis meticulously fabricated to keep the funds flowing. The family ATM. That's what they called me behind my back. I stumbled to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face, trying to wash away the shock. Looking in the mirror, I hardly recognized myself, pale, wide-eyed, trembling slightly. Was I really so blind, so desperate for my family's approval that I never questioned their endless need for money? My phone kept pinging with new messages. I couldn't bear to look. Instead, I returned to bed and stared at the ceiling, recounting every sacrifice I'd made. The modest apartment I rented instead of buying a home. The vacations I never took. The emergency fund I depleted last year when Dad claimed he needed dental surgery. The extra consulting work I took on when Mom said they might lose the house, all so they could cruise around the Caribbean and laugh at my gullibility. Sleep never came that night. By morning, my shock had crystallized into something harder and colder. I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. Then I started making lists. Every dollar I'd given them, every lie they'd told, every sacrifice I'd made. By noon, I had a spreadsheet that made me physically ill to look at. Over $130,000 in 5 years, almost a third of my post-tax income. My phone rang around 2 p.m. Kevin's face flashed on my screen. I let it go to voicemail. He called again immediately. Jordan? His voice was tentative when I finally answered. Did you get my text last night? The one about being your ATM? Yeah, I got it. My voice sounded strange even to my own ears. Flat, distant. Silence stretched between us. Then, shit. Jordan, it's not what you think. What is it then, Kevin? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like our parents have been scamming me for years while you all laugh about it. It's just jokes, Jordan. You know how Mom and Dad can be. How much of it was real? I cut him off. The furnace? Dad's medical issues? Your tuition problems? Another long pause. Some of it was real. Some, I repeated. Which parts exactly? Look, can we meet? This isn't a phone conversation. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop halfway between our apartments. I arrived early, ordered nothing, and watched him walk in, his expression a mixture of guilt and defiance that I recognized from childhood. Kevin had always been the favored child, the one who could do no wrong. even when he was clearly in the fall. Wrong. He slid into the booth across from me, fidgeting with a paper napkin. You weren't supposed to see those messages. Clearly. Jordan, you don't understand. Mom and Dad have always struggled. Stop. I pushed my phone across the table, the spreadsheet open. This is how much I've given them since I started at Meridian. Don't tell me they're struggling. He glanced at the numbers, then away. They have expenses you don't know about. Like what? Caribbean cruises? The new SUV Dad bought last year that he told me was a desperate used purchase when their car died? Kevin's face flushed. They raised us, Jordan. They put you through college. On scholarship. I worked 2 jobs to cover what the scholarships didn't. They gave us a home, food. That's the bare minimum parents are supposed to do, Kevin. I was surprised by my own outburst. Nearby patrons glanced our way. I lowered my voice. They've been lying to me for years. You've been helping them do it. What do you want me to say? That they take advantage of you? Fine. They do. But you make it so easy, Jordan, always trying to be the perfect daughter, the savior. You practically beg them to ask you for money. His words hit like a physical blow. I sat back, stunned. I'm sorry, he said quickly. That came out wrong, but you have to admit, you love feeling needed. You love being the one who swoops in and saves the day. Was he right? Had some part of me enabled this? I pushed the thought away. This wasn't on me. Did they ever need the money at all? Any of it? Kevin sighed, running a hand through his hair. A gesture so like our father, it momentarily disoriented me. The first time? Yes. When Dad lost his job 3 years ago, that was real. But then they realized how easy it was, how you never asked for proof or questioned them. After a while, it became a game, I finished for him. A joke, the stupid daughter who thinks she's helping. You're not stupid, Jordan. You're just trusting. Too trusting. I laughed, a hollow sound. Well, that's over now. What do you mean? I'm done. No more money. No more bailouts. They want a cruise? They can pay for it themselves. Kevin's expression shifted from guilt to alarm. You can't just cut them off. They depend on you now. They've been playing me for a fool. They're still our parents. Parents don't exploit their children, Kevin. I stood up, gathering my things. And brothers don't help them do it. Jordan, wait. He reached for my arm. What are you going to do? I looked down at his hand until he removed it. I'm going to do what I should have done years ago. I'm going to take care of myself for once. I walked out of the coffee shop into bright spring sunshine that felt like a mockery. My whole world had collapsed overnight, yet everything around me continued as if nothing had happened. People walked their dogs, chatted on phones, went about their normal Tuesday activities. That evening, I began systematically dismantling every financial connection I had with my parents. I removed them as authorized users on my credit card, which I discovered they'd been using far more than I realized. I canceled the automatic monthly transfer to their checking account. I called their mortgage company, where I'd been making direct payments to help them catch up, and removed myself from all correspondence. With each call, each click, I felt simultaneously lighter and more hollow. For so long, my identity had been wrapped up in being the responsible one, the provider, the good daughter. Who was I without that role? My parents called 6 times that night. I sent each call to voicemail. Their messages started concerned, then confused, then angry. Jordan, the mortgage payment was rejected. Call us back immediately. Your father and I are worried about you. What's going on? This is childish behavior, Jordan. If this is about Kevin's text, you're blowing it out of proportion. The last one, arriving near midnight, was from my father. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? By abandoning your family when we need you? I turned off my phone and cried myself to sleep. The next morning, I went to work with puffy eyes and a determination to focus on something, anything, other than my family situation. I threw myself into the quarterly projections meeting, speaking with an assertiveness that surprised my colleagues. My boss actually commented on it afterward. "Whatever's gotten into you, right? Keep it up. That was the most I've seen you contribute in months." Was that true? Had I been holding myself back at work too? I considered the promotion I'd turned down last year because it would have meant more travel, more hours, less availability for my parents' emergencies. The opportunities I'd passed up because I was too busy putting out fires at home to focus on my own growth. For 5 years, I'd been living as if I were still that desperate scholarship kid, scared of losing everything. But the truth was, I'd built a good career. I was respected in my field. I made more than enough money to live comfortably if I wasn't supporting 3 additional adults. Maybe Kevin was right about one thing. I had made it easy for them. Not because I wanted to feel needed, but because I'd never fully believed I deserved my own success. Some part of me had been waiting for it all to fall apart, so I'd been giving away pieces of it before it could be taken from me. Not anymore. When I finally turned my phone back on that evening, I had 27 missed calls and 43 text messages. I ignored most of them, but one from Kevin caught my eye. "They're freaking out. Dad's talking about driving to your place tonight. You should probably block your credit." I froze, then immediately called my bank. I'd added my parents as authorized users years ago when my mother claimed she needed access in case of emergencies. The customer service representative confirmed my fears. There had been a $5,000 cash advance taken from my credit card that morning. "Would you like to report this as fraud, Ms. Wright?" the representative asked. I closed my eyes. Fraud. The word hung in the air between us. Was I really prepared to accuse my own parents of fraud? "Ms. Wright?" "No," I said finally, "but I want to remove the authorized users immediately and close this account. Can I transfer the balance to a new card that only I have access to?" By the time I finished with the bank, someone was knocking on my apartment door. I knew who it was before. I checked the peephole. My father stood in the hallway, his expression a carefully constructed mask of paternal concern. Behind him, my mother wrung her hands, the picture of maternal worry. They'd perfected these roles over the years, I realized. The concerned father, the anxious mother, all designed to keep me in line. I opened the door, but didn't invite them. "In, Jordan." My father's voice broke on my name. "What's going on, sweetheart? We've been worried sick." "You cleaned out my credit card this morning," I said flatly. "That's what's going on." My mother stepped forward. "We panicked. When the mortgage payment bounced and we couldn't reach you, we thought something had happened to you. So you took $5,000 from my credit card?" "We were scared," my father insisted. "We thought maybe you'd had an accident. We were going to use the money to come find you." "In the Caribbean, maybe?" I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. "Or were you thinking more of a European cruise this time?" Their expressions shifted simultaneously, concern giving way to wariness. "Kevin told you about the messages," my mother said. Not a question. "Kevin didn't tell me anything. He accidentally sent me a text meant for your private chat. The one where you call me your ATM and laugh about how stupid I am." My father had the grace to look ashamed, but my mother's face hardened. "It was just jokes, Jordan. Blowing off steam. You don't know how hard it's been for us." "Actually, I do know. I have a spreadsheet." I stepped aside, gesturing to my laptop on the coffee table. "Would you like to see it? Every penny I've given you for the past 5 years, every emergency, every temporary loan that was never repaid." "We're your parents," my father said, as if that explained everything. "We raised you. We gave you everything. And I've been paying you back with interest, apparently. Well, the payments stop now." "You can't do this to us." My mother's voice rose. "We have bills coming due, the mortgage. Sell the house," I suggested. "It's too big for the 2 of you anyway, or the car, or cash in some of those vacations you've been taking with my money. After everything we've sacrificed for you." "What exactly did you sacrifice, Mom?" My college was paid for by scholarships and my own jobs. I've been on my own financially since I was 18, and apparently supporting all of you since I was 23. We gave you life, she hissed. We gave you a home, values, opportunities. And I've been grateful. I've shown my gratitude with every check, every transfer, every bill I've paid. But I'm done being your personal bank. My father placed a restraining hand on my mother's arm. His voice softened. Jordan, honey, we understand you're upset. We should have been more transparent about our needs. That's on us. But we are in real trouble now. The mortgage payment is your responsibility, I finished. Not mine. We could lose the house. Then you lose the house, my mother gasped. You would let us become homeless? You won't be homeless. You'll downsize like most people do when they can't afford their lifestyle. Or Dad could come out of semi-retirement and work full-time again. Or you could sell some of the things you've bought with my money over the years. This isn't you, Jordan, my father said quietly. You don't turn your back on family. Family doesn't treat each other like this. Family doesn't lie and manipulate and mock each other behind their backs. We made some mistakes, he admitted. We got carried away. But we love you, sweetheart. We're proud of you. That's not a lie. For a moment, I wavered. The need for my parents' approval ran deep, deeper than I wanted to admit. But then I remembered the texts, the laughter, the calculated deception. I need some time, I said finally. A lot of time. Don't contact me for a while. Don't come here again. I'll reach out if I'm ready. Jordan, my mother began, but my father shook his head. Let's go, Christine. She needs space. As they turned to leave, my father looked back. We do love you, Jordan, whatever you might think right now. I closed the door without answering and slid down against it until I was sitting on the floor, knees pulled to my chest. The apartment felt enormous suddenly, echoing with silence and possibilities. For the first time in years, my future was entirely my own. No more emergencies to plan around. No more calculations about how much I could spare this month. It should have felt liberating. Instead, I felt unmoored, set adrift from the only identity I'd known as an adult, the reliable daughter, the family savior. If I wasn't that person anymore, who was I? The next few weeks passed in a strange blur. I went to work, came home, occasionally met friends for dinner. On the surface, my life looked much the same as before. But internally, everything had shifted. I experienced random bursts of euphoria, followed by crushing guilt. I'd catch myself making mental calculations about my budget before remembering I didn't need to set aside money for my parents anymore. Kevin texted occasionally with updates I hadn't asked for. They're talking about selling the house. Dad's looking for full-time work again. Mom's furious. She blames me for the text. I responded minimally or not at all. Part of me felt I should be worried about them, should be checking in, making sure they were okay. That part had been carefully cultivated by years of manipulation, I realized. The guilt I felt wasn't natural. It had been programmed. After 6 weeks of silence, my mother showed up at my office. I returned from lunch to find her chatting with my assistant, who looked relieved to see me. Your mother's here, he said unnecessarily. She says it's urgent. My mother looked different, smaller somehow, less certain. She'd lost weight, and her usually perfect hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. For a moment, sympathy surged through me. Then I remembered the mocking texts, the deliberate manipulation, the $5,000 cash advance they'd taken without permission. Let's talk in the conference room, I said, gesturing down the hall. Once inside with the door closed, I turned to her. What do you want, Mom? She flinched at my tone. Is that any way to speak to your mother? What do you want? I repeated. Her eyes filled with tears, genuine or practiced, I couldn't tell anymore. We're losing the house, Jordan. The bank is foreclosing. Your father couldn't find work that pays enough, and with you cutting us off so suddenly. You've had over a month to make arrangements. It's not that simple. We have nowhere to go. Kevin's place is too small, and none of our friends can take us in. She reached for my hand. We need help, Jordan, just until we get back on our feet. The old Jordan would have written a check on the spot. The old Jordan would have invited them to stay with her until they found a new place, would have researched apartments for them, would have taken on their problems as her own. But I wasn't that person anymore. What happened to the $5,000 you took? From my credit card? I asked. She looked away. Bills, expenses. It goes so quickly. And the money you've been saving from all the fake emergencies over the years? Surely you put some aside. We never meant for things to go this far, she said, ignoring my question. It just happened gradually. You were doing so well, and we were struggling, and it seemed like you had more than enough. So you felt entitled to it. No. Well, not at first. But you were always so eager to help, so insistent. Don't you dare make this my fault. My voice was quiet but hard. You lied to me, repeatedly. You took advantage of my trust and generosity. You mocked me behind my back. We made mistakes, yes. But does that erase everything else? All the years we were good parents? All the sacrifices we made? Did it? I wasn't sure anymore. The rosy childhood I remembered had taken on a different hue in recent weeks as I'd re-examined my memories. The sacrifices they claimed to have made looked more like basic parental responsibilities, in retrospect. And even then, there had been signs of their true nature that I'd chosen to ignore. What exactly do you want from me, Mom? We need a place to stay, she said. Just for a little while, and maybe a loan for the security deposit on an apartment when we find one. We'll pay you back, I promise. I almost laughed. How many times had I heard that promise before? No, I said simply. No? Just like that? Her tears vanished, replaced by indignation. After everything we've done for you? Yes, Mom. No. Just like that. Where are we supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore. She stood up, hands shaking. I don't even recognize you. You've become cold, heartless. I've become someone who respects herself enough not to let people take advantage of her. Even family, especially family. You'll regret this, she said, gathering her purse. When you need us someday. I won't need you, I interrupted. I haven't needed you for years. I just thought I did. After she left, I sat in the conference room for a long time, waiting for the guilt to come. It arrived, but fainter than before, more distant. And it was accompanied by something new. Pride. I had stood my ground. I had protected myself. That evening, I emailed a realtor about buying a condo I'd had my eye on for months, but had deemed too expensive because of my family obligations. I signed up for a photography class I'd been interested in, but never had time for. I started researching vacation destinations. My father called the next day. Unlike my mother, he didn't try to guilt me directly. His approach was subtler. Your mother's not doing well, Jordan, he said after I reluctantly answered the phone. This stress is affecting her health, her blood pressure. Dad, I cut him off. I'm not responsible for Mom's health or her stress. She's heartbroken that you've abandoned us. I didn't abandon anyone. I stopped allowing myself to be exploited. He sighed heavily. I know we made mistakes, serious ones, but we genuinely need help now. Just a small loan to get us into an apartment, $3,000. We'll pay you back within 6 months, I swear. Where are you staying now? I asked, curious despite myself. With the Hendersons, in their guest room, but we can only stay another week, and we haven't found an apartment we can afford yet. The Hendersons were old family friends. I was surprised they'd taken my parents in, given how often my mother had criticized them over the years. What about a smaller apartment, I suggested, or a different neighborhood? At our age, we have certain needs, Jordan. We can't just live anywhere. I closed my eyes, recognizing the manipulation for what it was. I'm sorry, Dad. I can't help you. Won't, he corrected. You can help. You choose not to. Yes, I agreed. I choose not to. After years of choosing to help and being taken advantage of, I'm making a different choice. There was a long silence. I never thought I'd see the day when my own daughter would turn her back on me. And I never thought I'd see the day when my own parents would treat me like an ATM and laugh about it behind my back. I guess we're both disappointed. After we hung up, I blocked both their numbers. It was a temporary measure, I told myself, just until I felt stronger, more certain in my boundaries. But even that small act felt radical, like cutting a cord that had tethered me to an obligation I never truly consented to. 3 days later, Kevin showed up at my door. He looked exhausted, deep shadows under his eyes. "They're staying with me now," he said without preamble when I let him in. "In my one-bedroom apartment? I'm sleeping on the couch." "I didn't ask them to go to you," I pointed out. "Where else were they supposed to go?" "The Hendersons kicked them out after Mom insulted Mrs. Henderson's cooking one too many times. That sounded like our mother. She had never been good at hiding her feelings, especially negative ones. Again, not my problem. Easy for you to say. From your nice apartment with your big salary?" Kevin gestured around my modest living room. "Some of us don't have that luxury." "I worked for everything I have, Kevin. No one handed it to me." "Right. The golden child. Perfect grades, perfect job, perfect life." I laughed, genuinely surprised. "Is that how you see me? You were always the favorite, Kevin, the one who could do no wrong. The one whose college fund was sacred while I had to find scholarships. The one whose car was paid for while I took the bus." He looked genuinely confused. "What are you talking about? They always bragged about you to everyone. Jordan the successful one. Jordan the responsible one. Why do you think I resented you so much growing up?" We stared at each other, both realizing we'd been played against each other all our lives. Our parents had told each of us the other was the favorite, ensuring we never compared notes, never united against them. "They told me your college fund went to medical bills after Dad's accident," I said slowly. "That's why I didn't question having to find scholarships." "There was never a college fund for either of us," Kevin replied. "And Dad's accident was a minor fender bender. He wasn't even hurt." We sat in silence, absorbing this new understanding. "I can't keep them," Kevin said finally. "My landlord is already threatening to evict me for having unauthorized tenants, and they're driving me crazy. Nothing is good enough. Mom criticizes everything, and Dad just sits around looking defeated unless he's asking for money." "I'm sorry." "Kevin, truly. But I can't take them either." "Then what are they supposed to do?" "Act like the adults they are. Find jobs. Find an affordable apartment. Downsize their expectations. Live within their means for once in their lives." "They're in their 60s, Jordan. Plenty of people work in their 60s, and they're healthy. They've managed to travel. The world on my dime, after all." Kevin ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "So that's it? You're just done with them? With all of us?" I considered the question seriously. Was I done with my entire family? The thought made my chest ache. Despite everything, they were my blood, my history, the only family I had. "I'm done being used," I said finally. "I'm done being the responsible one who fixes everything. If they want a relationship with me, it has to be a real one. Based on mutual respect, not on what I can give them." "And me?" Kevin asked quietly. "Are you done with me too?" I studied my brother's face. We had never been close, not really. There had always been too much competition between us, too many resentments carefully cultivated by our parents. But there was something genuine in his expression now, a vulnerability I hadn't seen before. "That depends," I said. "Are you still going to be their messenger, their accomplice?" "I don't want to be," he admitted. "I'm tired, Jordan. Tired of the drama. Tired of the manipulation. I just want..." "What?" "A normal family, I guess, whatever that means." I nodded, understanding completely. Me too, but I don't think we're going to get that with them, Kevin. Not unless they make massive changes, and I don't see that happening. Before he left, Kevin hugged me awkwardly. It was the first real hug we'd shared in years, possibly decades. For what it's worth, he said, I'm sorry about the texts, about all of it. I know, I said, and I did. 2 months passed. I bought the condo, started the photography class, booked a trip to Portugal for the fall. I made new friends through the class, started dating casually for the first time in years. Without the constant drain on my finances and emotional energy, I found myself flourishing. I got the promotion at work that I'd previously turned down. I started therapy to unpack the years of manipulation and to understand why I'd allowed it to continue for so long. Through Kevin, I heard updates about our parents. They had found a small apartment in a retirement community. My father had taken a part-time job as a consultant. They were scraping by, according to my mother, though her definition of scraping by had always been suspect. I was having lunch with a friend from photography class when I spotted them across the restaurant. My parents, sitting with another couple, laughing and talking animatedly. They looked fine, more than fine. My mother's hair was freshly colored and styled. My father had a new watch I could spot even from a distance. They hadn't seen me. I could leave quietly, avoid the confrontation. But something in me had shifted over the past months. I was no longer afraid of their disapproval or their manipulation. I paid my bill, told my friend I'd be right back, and walked directly to their table. "Mom, Dad," I greeted them. "You're looking well." They froze, identical expressions of shock on their faces. The couple they were with looked between us curiously. "Jordan," my father recovered first. "What a surprise. These are our friends, the Lowells. Barbara, Tom, this is our daughter, Jordan. The one who abandoned you in your time of need?" Barbara asked, her tone disapproving. Clearly, they had been telling their usual tales. "Actually," I smiled pleasantly, "I'm the one who financially supported them for 5 years while they took vacations and mocked me behind my back. But that's all water under the bridge now, isn't it?" An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. "Jordan," my mother hissed, "this is hardly the place." "You're right," I agreed. "It's not. I just wanted to say hello. Glad to see you're doing well." As I turned to leave, my father caught my wrist. "We miss you, Jordan," he said quietly. "Despite everything, we miss you." I looked into his eyes, searching for sincerity. There was some there, I thought, but also calculation. Always calculation. "If you really miss me," I said, "as a daughter and not as a source of income, you know how to reach me. But things would have to be very different." I returned to my friend, who was watching with undisguised curiosity. "Family drama," I explained with a wry smile. "The gift that keeps on giving." That evening, my father called from a number I didn't recognize, bypassing my block. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "We want to make things right," he said without preamble. "Your mother and I have been doing a lot of soul-searching. We realize now how much we hurt you. We took advantage of your generosity, and we're truly sorry." I remained silent, waiting. "We'd like to see you," he continued, "to apologize properly, maybe have dinner." We found a nice little Italian place near our new apartment. Nothing fancy, but the food is good. "Just dinner?" I asked. "No requests for money or help?" "Just dinner," he promised. "Just family." I agreed, though with significant reservations. We set a date for the following week. I spent the intervening days alternating between hope and cynicism. Part of me wanted desperately to believe they had changed, that we could build a new relationship based on genuine connection rather than financial obligation. Another part, the part that had been keeping thorough records and setting firm boundaries, reminded me that leopards rarely change their spots. The restaurant was indeed modest, a small family-owned Italian place in their new neighborhood. My parents were already seated when I arrived, looking nervous but pleased to see me. My mother stood and moved as if to hug me before reading my body language and sitting back down. "You look wonderful," she said instead. "That new job must be agreeing with you." "Same job," I corrected. "Just a promotion." "Congratulations," my father said. "We always knew you'd go far." The conversation remained superficial through appetizers. They asked about my work, my new condo, my photography class. I asked about their apartment, my father's consulting job, their new neighborhood. It felt like talking to polite acquaintances rather than family. It wasn't until the main course arrived that my mother cleared her throat and moved the conversation to more substantial territory. "Jordan, we want you to know how truly sorry we are," she began. "What we did was wrong. Taking advantage of your generosity, lying about emergencies, it was unconscionable." "And the texts?" I prompted. "Mocking me behind my back?" She had the grace to look ashamed. "That was the worst part. Cruelty on top of deception. I have no excuse. All I can say is that sometimes people do terrible things to justify their own bad behavior. We told ourselves you could afford it, that you were happy to help, that it wasn't really hurting you. But we knew better," my father added. "Deep down, we knew, and we're deeply ashamed." Their apologies sounded rehearsed, but sincere enough. I found myself wanting to believe them, wanting to find a way forward. They were still my parents. Still, the people who had held my hand on the first day of school, who had cheered at my high school graduation, who had helped me move into my first apartment. "I appreciate the apology," I said carefully, "but I need to know that things will be different. Moving forward, I can't go back to how it was before." "Of course not," my mother said quickly. "We understand that trust has to be rebuilt. We're prepared to do that work, to prove ourselves to you again." "We've been getting our finances in order," my father added. "Living within our means for the first time in years. It's been an adjustment, but a necessary one." "I'm glad to hear that." The conversation flowed more easily after that. We reminisced about happier times, family vacations when Kevin and I were young, holidays, shared jokes. For brief moments, it felt like we were reconnecting on a genuine level. It wasn't until dessert that the other shoe dropped. "There is one thing," my mother said hesitantly, glancing at my father. "A small thing, really, but it would mean so much to us." My guard, which had been gradually lowering throughout the evening, instantly shot back up. "What is it?" "Your father's birthday is next month," she explained. "His 65th, and we were thinking of having a small party. Nothing extravagant, just family and a few close friends." "Okay," I said cautiously. "What does that have to do with me?" "Well, the community center where we'd like to hold it requires a deposit," my father explained. "Just $500. We'd pay you back, of course, once Dad's pension starts coming in next month." And there it was, the real purpose of the dinner, the reason for the apologies and the reminiscing. Another request for money, another promise to repay that would never be fulfilled. I set down my fork carefully. So this whole evening, the apologies, the catching up, it was all leading to this? Another request for money? "No," my mother protested. "Not at all. We genuinely wanted to reconnect. The party is just a small thing. But it's the reason you called me, isn't it? The reason for this dinner? Not to apologize or rebuild our relationship, but because you need money again." My father reached for my hand. "Jordan, you're misunderstanding. Yes, we need a small loan, but that's not why we wanted to see you. We miss you. We want you back in our lives." I pulled my hand away. "Here's what I find interesting. You say you're living within your means now, that you're getting your finances in order. Yet the first time we reconnect, you're asking for money again. Do you not see the pattern here?" "It's just a small amount," my mother insisted, "for a special occasion." "It's never just a small amount. It's never just a one-time thing. It's always the beginning of a slippery slope back to where we were before. So you won't help us? My father's voice had an edge now. After we've apologized, after we've made efforts to change? I didn't say that, I replied. I would be happy to attend Dad's birthday party. I might even be willing to help plan it or contribute to it in some way. But I won't give you money directly. Not again. Not ever. That's harsh, my mother said, and unnecessary. We've learned our lesson. Have you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like the same old pattern. The only difference is that this time you softened me up first with apologies before making the ask. My father's expression hardened. After everything we've done for you, don't, I cut him off. Don't go there again. That manipulation doesn't work on me anymore. We finished the meal in tense silence. When the check came, I reached for it automatically, then stopped myself. Let them pay for once. Outside the restaurant, my mother tried one more time. Jordan, please. It's your father's 65th birthday, a milestone. Don't you want to be part of that? I would love to be part of it, I said truthfully. As your daughter, not your bank. Let me know when and where the party is, and I'll be there. But the financial relationship between us is over. Permanently. Then I'm not sure there can be any relationship, my father said quietly, and there it was, the truth I had suspected all along. Without financial support, they had no interest in me as a person, as a daughter. I was valuable to them only for what I could provide. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, and I meant it. Despite everything, the final severing of this connection hurt in a place so deep I hadn't realized it existed. The door is open if you ever want a real relationship, but I won't be used again. I walked away from them then, straight-backed and clear-eyed. Each step felt like both an ending and a beginning. Kevin called me the next day. I heard about the dinner, he said. Already? They work fast. They wanted me to talk to you, to convince you to be reasonable about Dad's birthday. And Will, you? I asked. Try to convince me? He laughed, a short, sharp sound. No, I'm done being their go-between. Actually, I called to say I'm proud of you for standing your ground. Thanks, Kevin. The words felt strange, unfamiliar. Kevin and I had never been each other's cheerleaders. That means a lot. They won't change, you know, he said. Not really. This is who they are. I know. I think I've always known on some level. I just didn't want to see it. So what now? It was a good question. What now? I had built my entire adult identity around being the responsible one, the provider, the good daughter. Without that role, who was I? But over the past months, I had started to discover the answer. I was someone who valued herself enough to set boundaries, someone who pursued her own interests and passions, someone who recognized toxic relationships and had the courage to step away from them. Now I live my life, I told Kevin. My life, not theirs. And I suggest you do the same. I'm trying, he said. It's harder than I thought it would be. It is, I agreed. But it gets easier. I promise. After we hung up, I sat on my balcony watching the sunset over the city. For so long, I had defined myself by my family's needs and expectations. I had measured my worth by how much I could give, how much I could sacrifice. It had never been enough, not for them, and ultimately not for me either. But now, for the first time, I was defining myself on my own terms. I was discovering who Jordan Wright really was beneath the roles and responsibilities I had taken on. It hurt to lose the family I thought I had, the parents I had believed in, despite evidence to the contrary, the brother I had competed with rather than connected with. But in that loss, I was finding something perhaps more valuable. Myself. My phone buzzed with a text. Kevin again. Hey, want to grab coffee this weekend? Just us. No parents, no drama. Thought maybe we could try being actual siblings for once. I smiled and typed back. I'd like that. Family, I was learning, wasn't just about blood or obligation. It was about mutual respect, genuine care, honesty. Maybe Kevin and I could build something like that from the ashes of our old relationship? Maybe not, but it was worth trying. As for my parents, the door remained open, but with clear boundaries now. If they ever wanted a real relationship with me, based on love rather than exploitation, I would welcome it, but I wasn't holding my breath. And for the first time in my adult life, I was okay with that. I had spent 5 years being the family ATM, too blind to see the manipulation, too desperate for approval to stand up for myself. But no more. I was reclaiming my worth, my dignity, my future, and it felt like coming home to myself at last.